my work that I do now, if I try to wing it, I will burn out so fast
Mm.
because of the amount of pain that people are experiencing around me. So it really demands of me my own discipline and practices. And I've even been through a season where I was like, man, my standard practices aren't working. So it was like, I got to try something else.
Welcome to Flourishing Leadership in Tough Times, where we have honest conversations to help you stay rooted with integrity, rise with courage, and lead with hopeful resilience. Hosted by Deborah Owen. Hello, friend. Today's guest is Dori Gorman, the Association Chaplain for the YMCA of Middle Tennessee, where she leads the Spirit and Mind Department across 12 centers, 90 plus school sites, and a range of community programs. A former church planter and pastor, Dori brings deep compassion, wisdom, and creativity to her work in whole person wellness, integrating emotional, spiritual, and communal care in accessible, everyday ways. I love to hear that. She holds a Master's of Divinity from Emmanuel Christian Seminary and a BA from Baylor, and she's the author of Anonymous, Naming the God of Esther and the Women Who Plant Churches. That sounds intriguing too. And whether she's mentoring staff, offering care to families, or going camping with her own family, Dori shows up with clarity, courage, and deep hope for how people flourish even in uncertain times. Dori, welcome. It's wonderful to have this opportunity to talk today.
Hey, Debbie, it's great to be here. Thanks for that welcome. It's always somewhat strange to hear portions of my life read in ways that probably make me sound better than I am. So
No, I'm sure you have
it's
lots to
great. It's
offer.
really good.
Thank you. Well, you've carved out a very unique role. It's still pretty uncommon, I think, and that is chaplaincy in the YMCA. So, what drew you to this work and what has it taught you about leading in uncharted territory?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of people say, what's like your why story? And meaning like, where did you first get started with the why? And it's often called the why, just short for
Right.
YMCA. But it started before I knew it was starting. So I was a high school student and our church was under construction. And so our youth group we were kind of these, vagabond group of teenagers that was in that church basement, and we needed a place to go while our church was under construction. So we met at a YMCA,
Mm.
and it was in Franklin, Tennessee. And I can still remember the room I stood in. I think it was a dance studio because I just remember the mirror of being in that room
Uh-huh.
and saying to a group of my peers, it was after kind of a significant moment in my faith journey that I was feeling called to ministry. And at the time, it was very much youth ministry. It was kind of I felt, I don't know if I just thought like every calling has to be very specific. I don't think that as much anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, at that time, that was like youth ministry is my calling. And so it's fun to fast forward almost 25 years and now be ministering in the very space that I first had that call to ministry. I think at that time, not only youth ministry, I had a very like ministry is only like within the church. Like everything else is, parachurch. So it's for the church, existing for it, but I want to be in the church only.
Mm.
And that clearly has broadened and clearly has changed and transformed over time. That old adage, I don't even know where it comes from. If you want to make God laugh, tell God your plans for the future.
I've heard that
So,
a few times too. Yeah.
yeah,
I say it
yeah.
frequently.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the fun origin story of me at the Y. And I remember mentioning that when I interviewed here, and I think I made our CEO at the time feel really old because when I was that high school student, he was actually the executive director at that branch that I
Oh,
was in. So I was like, sorry, that wasn't my intention. But
yeah. Yeah.
no, as I began to work more and more in church communities, I've just been really intrigued through the years of that question, like if your church disappeared, would your community even know it?
Right.
And became more and more compelled, less about it's a wonderful call to want to get people to come into a building, but I just kind of became more and more compelled by the idea of what are we doing outside of the walls and how are we really showing up. Um, to a hurt, to the world when they're hurting and when they're celebrating too. So there's some really great, beautiful things happening in the world, and how are we engaging in that? And then there's also a lot of pain, and how are we walking alongside that? So when we were in Chicago, a lot of our church work was more really community development. And it was like, can we do a lot of community development work and see if a faith community could come out of that?
Mhm.
So when our family was making a change from Chicago to Tennessee, I just began to kind of go, what kind of group, what kind of faith opportunity awaits me here? And it's not the greatest story, but I was on Indeed.com and I saw a chaplain at the Y, and I was like, that's intriguing. What would that look like? And maybe not every community has a large YMCA, but in Nashville, it's a very large YMCA. 5 counties use the Y for their before and after school programming. And so we're talking, over 6,000 kids are in
Wow.
our staff are in the schools doing before care and after care. We have a huge camp. Over 5,000 kids go to our camp in the summer. Like if we disappeared, this community, it would have a pretty drastic impact. And that's not even, our branches where people are daily coming and finding community and connection and a place to belong. So I think that's really what drew me, is that like being a part of something much bigger than me and trying to do my best to just join in on what God's already been doing long before I showed up, and then seeing what, I don't know, in what way I can serve that mission.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. Hi, thank you for letting me interrupt this episode for just a moment. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, the chances are you care deeply about leading well, especially in times that feel heavy or uncertain or demanding. One of the convictions behind this podcast is that flourishing leadership doesn't start with strategy. It starts with who you're becoming as a leader, under pressure, in grief or sorrow, in change or transformation. And that's why I've been writing a series of devotional books called The Awaiting for Advent and When Sorrow Speaks for Lent. They're grounded in neuroscience, the personality patterns of the Enneagram, and reflective practice to help you grow in awareness, self-honesty, and presence. And while they do follow the rhythms of the church year, they're really for any season when leadership feels costly. They're resources you can return to whenever you want to lead from the inside out. Not just do more or say more, but become more of who you were created to be, more grounded, more whole. So please see the show notes for links to these resources and share them with your friends. Thanks, and now back to this episode. I'm wondering, because I haven't heard of a Y having a chaplain before. Does that feel like it's kind of uncharted territory? I
It
mean,
definitely does. Yeah,
you told me before we started recording that you're the fourth person in this position, but because it's not so common, let's speak to that for a moment,
sure.
because there are listeners perhaps and viewers who may not necessarily be Christian, but who are interested in the whole idea of, well, what does it mean to lead in a role that's kind of uncharted, that doesn't have a long history?
Yeah, absolutely. When I thinking about that phrase "uncharted territory," I automatically thought of I think it's Todd Bolsinger's
Todd
book,
Bolsinger's book, yes.
that Canoeing the Mountains. I was like,
Right.
yeah, that's what it feels like for sure in my role. So there's a little over 30 of us that have some type of chaplain title, or for some wise, it's Christian Mission Director or Christian Emphasis Director. We have an association chaplain and then a spirit mind director. So our mission is to help people grow in spirit, mind, and body. And so, kind of defining my department that I oversee is the spirit mind department. Nothing wrong with saying Christian emphasis or Christian mission, but we would kind of say, well, shouldn't all of our departments do that? And so,
Mhm.
trying to really think through the best name that also is really inclusive for people. So we are an organization that is founded on Christian values, and Christian principles really drive a lot of what we do, but we're also an organization for all people. Not only our members who walk through our doors, but our staff. We don't discriminate on who we hire. And so no matter if you have no faith background or if you're of a faith that isn't Judeo-Christian, like you have a home here in the Y for sure. We want you to feel that way. And
Yes.
so yeah, I would say the position's a little bit of I don't know if an outlier is the best word, but a lot of times I get kind of a look of like, huh? Like what is that position? I
Yeah.
didn't know Wise had that. A lot of times, especially chaplain title is a bit regional. People in the Bible Belt in the South are more familiar with chaplains in hospitals,
Hmm.
especially Clarksville's a military town. They're very familiar with chaplains in the military. So it tends to work here. That might not work everywhere.
Mm.
So that's also why sometimes there's different titles. But a lot of times my introduction of myself to our new staff is I'll say, some of you are like maybe even weirdly excited that we have a chaplain, probably because you think this means I have my pastor here. I have a pastor. And you're like super excited.
Mhm.
And then some of you are extremely nervous. And just the fact that I'm talking to you right now at new hire orientation, you're second guessing whether you should have worked at this Y. And what I want to say to both extremes is let's all take a deep breath. Because if you come from a more religious Christian church background, I'm probably going to disappoint you. And if you come from a non-Christian or no faith background, my hope is that I'm going to surprise you pleasantly.
Oh,
And
interesting.
just to kind of say, let's all take a
Mhm.
deep breath.
Mhm.
So for our why, we define spiritual health as a connection to a higher purpose or a higher power.
Mhm.
And so we feel like everyone can have a spiritual experience working at the Y. For some, that may be tied to their Christian faith, and for others, it's tied to being a part of a vision and mission that's bigger than them.
Mhm.
And then mental health is just how you think, feel, and act. And we want to be about promoting a place with healthy thinking, healthy feelings, and healthy actions. And so
Mhm.
um, that is the way our Y describes it. Now, there's a saying within the Y: when you go to one Y, you've been to one Y, meaning it looks
Yeah.
really different. Because one of the things I love about the YMCA is we really contextualize to our community, and so our little flavor of how we do spirit mind in Tennessee and chaplaincy may not work somewhere else, and we really want to bless that, and that's really okay.
Mhm.
But I will say we have an annual gathering now of people with my role to try to get together and kind of make sense of what it looks like to the canoe a mountain when you are in
Mhm.
uncharted territory, so we can encourage one another and support each other.
Right. Right. Can you just define for us, please, what exactly you mean by spirit mind? Because I've seen that on the website and you've mentioned it a couple times. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, pretty standard across all Ys in the USA. All of our mission statements say something about helping people grow in spirit, mind, and body. And so this
Okay.
idea
So
of
it's
like
okay.
whole
Yeah.
person wellness. Now
Right.
it's a little tricky with my department because I'm not like only your spirit and your mind, not your body. Like, of course, it's all encompassing of the whole person, but a lot of times when people think of a YMCA, they think of a fitness center and they think of growing their body only and um, getting stronger muscles and things like that, which is wonderful. And that actually can help your mental health and your spiritual health. So that all goes together. But our department specifically kind of holds up, hey, how are we remembering that we're holistic and how are we remembering spiritual and mental health? So yeah, I will say those two words a lot and not realize like, wait a minute, that's very YMCA language. So
Spirit, mind, and body. That that's that triad that when you put it all together, like, oh, of course. And you know what's interesting? This time period in our country right now, which will probably continue for the foreseeable future,
yeah.
which is a struggle for so many people. And I love the fact that the Y is addressing what really feel strongly is a spiritual problem
Hmm.
in our country. And there are a lot of different ways that that could be defined. But when it comes down to a lack of empathy, a lack of compassion, I I feel like that's a real spiritual issue. And
Absolutely.
I'd love to have you just talk about that a little bit, particularly because the Y is intended to welcome everybody, no matter what their background. How how do we deal with the tough times that we're facing from that body, mind, and spirit place that holds a space for everybody, no matter what your background is, but recognizing that we really do have a spiritual issue in this country.
Yeah. I think one of the things that people might not think of it being really unique, but it really is when people come together around a common interest. So let's say working out and we're all in this group fitness class together. I mean, we have people in one room that vote different from each other, pray different from each other, look different from each other, have different backgrounds. It's a little bit of like, I don't care. We're all here to grow muscles. Like that's what we're, and over time, especially if there is consistency of showing up to those classes,
Mhm.
I mean, it really is for most people the most diverse time of their week,
Wow.
that has such a potential for what I really do think are spiritual experiences where you all of a sudden, maybe someone who is being spoken of derogatively in the press or in the news or by government leaders in really negative ways, you kind of go, wait a minute, you know, that's Satish. And I he's not like that. So why
Right.
would I like that doesn't make sense to me. And you have that like cognitive dissonance moment of maybe these overarching statements about groups of people aren't right. But when you don't know an individual within that group to be able to have that moment of, well, that's different.
So it's proximity, which is critical.
Right. And I would
Right.
also say it's how do you move, and this is the kind of the age-old question of the why. How do we move proximity to community? Because
Right.
we are seeing more and more people show up. I'm at our downtown Y right now, probably one of the hardest Ys to truly build community because everybody shows up with AirPods in their
Oh
ears.
yeah, for
And I just
sure.
want to get in and get out and work out, which is great. Like there, you got to start somewhere for
Right.
sure. But trying to foster spaces with things like coffee and tea and where you actually can linger after a class and connect and really find ways to really belong to one another. We also have some programs that we have like after breast cancer. So where it's women coming together after they've gone through all of the excruciating treatments involved when you've got that breast cancer diagnosis and they're in a small group together and they're working out together and they're seeing a nutritionist together and they're trying to figure
Mm,
out life after breast cancer.
mm,
So
mm,
sometimes too, it can be uniting around a purpose, but sometimes it's uniting around a common pain.
mm.
And I mean, we've had um, you know, I hope it's okay to say this if you need to edit this out, but we've had a woman who is going through a gender transition in our after breast cancer program
Oh
and felt
wow.
just as included and just as a part of it and kind of blew stereotypes of other women in the group who might be thinking, how can you be in here?
Mm.
But she had the same common pain. And so
Right.
that's, something to unite around. And so I think some of it is we're in such a time where we're being told, maybe because of a lot of fear mongering, that everyone is different from you and they're enemies and you've got to, be on top, or even that scarcity mindset that's like, there's not room for everyone and they're going to take, your spot.
Yes.
So you've got to
Yes.
take theirs. And I feel like, at least what I see in my faith is Jesus saying there's room for everybody at the table. And if the why can be like one huge table that's like, come, you all can be here. You're all welcome. That to get to be a part of that for me is really exciting.
Oh, I love that. That's abundance. Absolutely.
Yes, there's room
Yeah.
for us all. I
Yes.
don't have to share a meal or a fitness room or a club space with someone who prays differently than I do. I don't have to become less in that, or my
Mm.
faith doesn't become less by honoring this person's faith. And in actuality, it strengthens my faith most of the time. So,
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Um, so what has surprised you most about how people respond to spiritual or mental health care, particularly
Mm.
when it's offered outside, that traditional religious setting.
Yeah. I'll speak to the mental health side of what I do.
Sure.
It's interesting. I think I've been intrigued at times to come across what can feel like opposition. And so we've got so much data right now that especially in the United States, that from Surgeon General data of like we have a mental health crisis going
Yeah.
on in our community. And sometimes I think I get surprised by um, either it's someone from their Christian faith tradition saying just like all people need is Jesus. All people need is Jesus. And I'm not saying I disagree with that statement. There's a great book, and the title's real a bit provocative, but and I'm forgetting the author's name right now, but it says, I love Jesus, but I want to die.
Mm.
And it's a woman's own story of her mental health struggle in the church. And I love my seminary. I love the program I went through. I have a 90 credit hour degree. And if you ask me how many classes were on mental health, it would be zero.
Right.
And so um, I want to see more pastors and churches really say we need more training in this area, not to necessarily become therapists, but trainings like mental health first aid, QPR is another one, question, persuade, respond, like learning how to respond when someone's in crisis. And that sometimes, I mean, we even see in stories with Jesus, it's like sometimes it takes a little more. Like this one only comes out with prayer and
Right.
fasting, with more things. And so I think I've been surprised by that at times, resistance that like I don't think any mental health services are trying to replace Jesus.
Mm.
I think it's a both and not even in crisis situations. I think it was Peter Scazzero, a pastor in New York, that
Mhm.
says you can have Jesus in your heart, but you still got grandpa in your bones.
Yes,
That
I've heard
sometimes we
him say
need to
that.
work out of our
Yeah.
patterns that are unhealthy and things like that, and we need a guide. And that's all a lot of times therapy is like a Sherpa to help us through those things. So that's been surprising. And then sometimes even not from a church or faith lens, but sometimes in our YMCA, people being concerned that we're doing mental health when we're not therapists, which is a valid concern. And another quote I love is, I respect therapists too much to impersonate them. I try to be extremely clear that, and maybe a better word for it is we're about mental wellness and like
Hmm.
how to be whole as a human.
Yeah.
And I absolutely, a lot of what I'm doing is referring people to those trained professionals. I'm not trying to claim to be one myself or any of that. But there are a lot of times that people might not need a professional. They might just need a listening ear. And I'm finding that more and more as loneliness grows more and more, is that sometimes we've just forgotten how to be a friend and
Yeah.
how to be a support. And so a lot of times to our staff, I will say, I cannot be your therapist. There's 2,000 of you. I wouldn't have the bandwidth even if I had the degree, but I can do my best to offer listening ears, and we have volunteer chaplains that can do that as well. Um, so I think those have been some surprises that sometimes it's like, if you're not a therapist, you shouldn't touch the field of mental health. And I would go, no, no, no. We need our whole community feeling empowered to notice someone. I mean, the kind of care I do is like, hey, do you pay attention at the grocery store to the people around you? And if you happen to see someone crying, would you know what to say? Would you say anything? Would you reach out? Would we be that community for one another? And so, too often, I think we can go to extreme where we only professionalize it, where it's like, well, you have to go to a therapist. I
Mhm.
would never say that to someone crying in a grocery store. I hope I would say, like, hey, are you okay?
Right.
Do you need space, or would you like to talk to someone? And I'm
Right.
here
Right.
if I can listen and
Right.
just remember
Yeah.
how to be the village again. We all,
Yes, yes. It's about fellowship and community. Comes back to
yeah.
community. And I'll just share this too, a little pitch for what I've been working on with my doctoral project is what I'm calling the wellspring for transformation and for renewal and transformation. And we start the whole project with rest, first of all,
Mm.
and recognizing that we need to be able to set boundaries
Yeah.
and be able to say, I need to be able to rest. Also, some strategies for organizing time better, because some people need that.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but some people do, in order to have the the calendar and emotional space for actual rest. And then we go into belovedness. And what does
Hmm.
it mean to be a beloved child of God, and how incredibly important that is. And our fruitfulness arises out of our belovedness. It's
Hmm.
not that we are fruitful first and then we become beloved.
Right.
And
Right.
that's too often, and I learned that from Trevor Hudson. It's too often that people start with, I've got to provide this
Yeah.
in order to be beloved.
Right.
Whereas God says to us, no, you are beloved just the way you are, even if
Absolutely.
you've never done a thing.
Yeah.
And then out of that, you become sustained and affirmed, and fruitfulness flows.
Yeah.
So
It's really hard to move that, what you just said, from your head to your heart. Like
it
I feel
is.
like you can grow up knowing that, but really not know it, like
Yeah.
heartfelt know it.
Yeah.
I think I'm
Yeah.
still like, even you saying that, I was like, oh, I needed to hear that today. Like, it's just that reminder, because I
Yeah.
do think a lot of times we treat ourselves like we're machines and we're meant to just produce all the time, and then we'll earn love, then we'll earn a blessing. But it's just been given. It's just freely given.
Well, I'm high Enneagram 3. You indicated you're high 1. So yeah, we're the type who like to produce and
Sure.
get things right. And we feel
Yes.
like that produces our belovedness instead of starting with it.
Right.
And I think that contributes to, I love what you talk about, um, mental wellness or emotional wellness, whole, head, heart, and hands. It starts with that wellness aspect,
Yeah.
and believing that we're not broken to begin with is
Right.
important as well. So that's great. I'm appreciative of hearing your perspective on that. And yeah, how do we respond to somebody in the store who's
Hmm.
having a tough time?
Right.
Do we feel equipped to do that? Do we feel safe doing that?
Right. Yeah.
Do we
And
feel
I'm,
confident enough
yeah.
in our own belovedness and in our own giftings, just to be able to say, you're okay?
Yeah. And do we have the awareness when to go, ooh, I'm not the right person to help someone, but I can
Right.
go get someone else who could do this. And
Exactly.
that's okay too. Because sometimes we also have the opposite of like everyone wanting to show up and be something for someone when we might not always be the most equipped at that. And so I think, or it might not be safe, like you mentioned.
Right.
And it's like, okay, this isn't for me right now, but I can go find someone who could still help and could be a listening ear and a
Yeah.
support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I'm going to shift just a little bit. What do tough
Sure.
times look like in your YMCA context, and how does your role help people navigate such tough times with courage, compassion, hope?
Yeah. Well, I think I'll think first more like communal, tough times.
Okay.
So when this is being recorded, we just went through a government shutdown, and so one of the things that my role looked like, in my department, I have a great colleague. Her name is Molly Jones, and she reached out to me and she was like, "I think people are going to need to know where to get food. I think if this is
Right.
going to impact SNAP benefits, then can I work on food distribution list?" And so that what we ended up creating very quickly was go to this website, click on your YMCA location, and there's two or three food banks or hot meal sites within X amount of miles from your YMCA branch. And
Mm.
I will not take credit for that. That was her idea, and it was great. But that's kind of that, just a practical example of a quick response to
Immediate
something. Yeah,
physical needs. Yes.
communal, absolutely. We've done that as well as our city has become one of thousands of cities on a list of school shootings. And after the Covenant shooting, just serving a practical need of how would the kids get their backpacks back?
Wow.
And so our YMCA was a location where all the backpacks were there and families could come and pick up their backpacks. And we also had emotional support dogs there and crafts and just a safe space activities. And it was not a, I mean, I guess I'm talking about it now, but it
Mhm.
wasn't, we didn't want it on the news. We didn't want anything that would make these families hesitate to feel safe in our buildings. And so just there's a need, here's how we can respond. But also trying to respond the right way. I have in my office, you can't see it, but I guess it's on that shelf
Uh-huh.
is a stethoscope. And I have a quote. I'm not a doctor, but it says, it's from William Osler, the inventor of the stethoscope. And it says, if you listen to your patients, they will tell you how to heal them. And
Mm.
so I think so much at the Y, we're trying to, we have a lot of activators in the Y that's like, fire, aim, ready, like very go, go, go.
Mhm.
But we also have a lot of really great staff that remind us, like, hold on, let's slow down. And that's actually part of my role. I say a lot of times we're like, go, go, go. And as the chaplain, I'm like, slow, slow, slow. Like,
Yeah.
what's actually needed here? And what is the best way to show up when there are tough times in our community?
Mm.
And then I guess individually, my part, really a large part of my role is I'll have staff that'll reach out for chaplain care and just trying to support them. We have a team of volunteer chaplains, so it's not just me, but really just showing up to be that support, to offer listening, to offer hope. Um, and it's a mental health first aid phrase, but we offer hope with facts. So how do we tell people things that are hopeful and also give them some facts around,
Yeah.
hey, people have gone through this before, and
Right.
if would you like to hear some ideas of what you can do? And so I think that's just some of the practical ways
Yeah.
we try to help show up. Um, and then we walk through those tough times too. And one of the things I think is so vital for me as a chaplain in the job that I'm in, I kind of hate to admit this, but I feel like a lot of times as a pastor or as someone I was preaching Sundays, um, there are times I could just wing it.
Mm.
I didn't always prepare as much as I could. Those Sundays just keep coming every 7 days. They're there again, and there's another thing to teach, another thing to do. Um, my work that I do now, if I try to wing it, I will burn out so fast
Mm.
because of the amount of pain that people are experiencing around me. So it really demands of me my own discipline and practices. And I've even been through a season where I was like, man, my standard practices aren't working. So it was like, I got to try something else. That's where kayaking came from. I started kayaking because I was like, I need something in nature, something maybe somewhat solitary, but I don't feel alone. I feel very
Mhm.
connected to God and all of that. And it's been a great, really spiritual experience that is also whole person for me. So sometimes being willing to try something new when you feel like you're in a rut with some of your maybe go-to practices that help.
That's a great idea. Be willing to try something new
Yeah,
because yeah, the human brain craves novelty anyway.
right.
So that's a great idea. Um, so let me ask you this. You've planted churches, you've led in multiple states, you've written about women and hiddenness in scripture. When you look back, what are some of the threads of calling or faith that have kept showing up for you, even in some unexpected roles?
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of hinted at kind of how I saw calling when I
Yes.
was 16 of
Yeah.
I think I saw it maybe it's because I came from a generation that we signed so many commitment cards. We signed like abstinence commitment cards and not drinking commitment cards. Everything was like for the rest of your life. And it
Oh,
was all
wow.
these like
It's a real
extreme
southern
commitments.
thing.
Yes, I guess so. I don't know.
Haven't
But
heard that in New England.
but it kind of created in me when you're feeling like this is a strong call, it it's maybe, I don't know if it was also a youth naivety to make it for the rest of my life. And I've over time really learned that most callings I've been given, I've added on a time like for the rest of my life was added really on by me. And maybe just needing more Ecclesiastes of like, for everything there is a season, and approaching callings more seasonally. And not to be non-committal. I don't mean it in that way.
Mhm.
The maybe the thread has always been this commitment to Christ and to being pursued by God, and to try to remind myself every day that I'm that blessing, that I'm a gift, like you said.
Mhm.
But and a lot of days doing worse, and some days doing better at reminding myself of that. So that maybe has been the through line, but things that I've learned, just a willingness to hold what you think you're supposed to be doing openly, and more with open hands, because there have been so many times. An example would be um, my spouse and I actually ended up going to seminary together. And I had had this calling since I was 16, and his was kind of new. He was in his 30s. And we began to really discern that we could be great ministry partners. And there is no way in this world I would ask him to be a youth pastor. Like, that's middle school is my thing. I love middle school students to this day. And that is not him. And I wasn't gonna try to,
Mhm.
square hole round peg. Wasn't gonna work. Uh, so, being open to go, okay, well, what could that look like if the calling for this season is to do something together? And that's where really that community development and church planting came out of. And
Okay.
then so being willing to like let go of really youth ministry. And then lo and behold, I'm in Chicago, and our church is meeting at a school that had K through eighth grade. And we ended up starting a middle school ministry. So it comes back. I don't know. There seems to be this I don't want to say this like a money back guarantee promise, but in my life, I have found when I am willing to let go, it's almost like a boomerang. It comes back, and it comes back in a way I would have never expected.
Mhm.
But it tends to be really beautiful. So things I've let go of, like I do still really miss preaching, but now it kind of comes back to me in these like every meeting at the Y. I'm often asked to lead a mission moment, and so can I say what I once said in 45 minutes in three? A lot
Yeah.
harder. Actually,
Yeah.
it takes more discipline and more
Yeah.
work, but like seeing that I let that go, but it's come back to me in a more really fulfilling and even challenging way. And so I think that just when you feel like this is too much of a sacrifice, most likely what I was not wanting to sacrifice was a feeling of control. And
Yeah.
and that the more I let go of control, the control that I think I have, um, the more something really beautiful comes out of that.
And honestly, that is how we flourish in tough times because we hang on to things, we grip, we cling, or at least I'm speaking for myself here,
Sure.
thinking that I need to control this. And when I let go, that's typically when, okay, things now start to roll downhill and
Yeah.
it's a little
And
bit
I have the
easier.
double whammy where I'm like mad at myself for gripping onto control, which is so silly because I'm like, if my child were in front of me and they were scared and they held on to me, I wouldn't be like, stop, trust,
Yeah,
let go. Like it is a very human tendency to
sure.
want that. I mean, from the very beginning and in the garden, there was that desire for control, and
Yes.
it's there. So to just give ourselves grace when we do it, and then rediscover that letting go feels pretty good. And even like the mindfulness practice of like clenching your fists really, 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 really tight, and holding it for even setting a timer and doing it for like a minute, and then letting go and feeling physically what that tingling feels like, of like it's a weirdly physical experience that almost feels weirdly spiritual, because it is this metaphor of like what it can feel like when we really will surrender what our plan is to.
It's an embodied
Yeah,
spiritual practice.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, they're just, I would love to. we're running out of time, but I'm also curious about your book, Anonymous, about women and Esther. And
Yeah.
is there something that you would love to share with us about that book?
Sure. It's funny. I'm like, man, it's been a while. I need to pick that up. Well, one thing I would say, in some ways I feel like I cheat when I say I wrote it. It's a compilation book. Each chapter is from a different woman in church planting or in
That's
ministry
great.
background.
So there are key
I kind of
lessons that for
Yeah,
leadership and thriving that you would like to
yeah.
share?
So I think one of the biggest is that I really is kind of the difference between Vashti and Esther. And I think as I read more about these two women, is Vashti gets a really bad rap. And Esther, like, so Vashti was a part of the privileged class, and yet at the same time, as a woman, she didn't really get a choice when she had to but she showed her privilege when she didn't appear before the
Hmm.
king,
Hmm.
and and that made him really, really mad. And so I think one of the biggest lessons I have for women is sometimes we can look down on each other because we don't really have an adequate understanding of our own privilege and in different places. And when I say that, I mean access, our background. And some of us grew up where we had a lot of tools and a lot of resources just handed to us. I think of even my own. I had to get a master's to be doing what I'm doing. There's no way I could be here without that.
Hmm.
And yet, many of my African American colleagues have to have a doctorate. And there's typically most of my um, female Black clergy women all have their doctorates. And I admire that. And then I also go, they had to.
They
And
have
and
to.
so there's kind of my privilege. So there's a lot of work I think to explore between Vashti and Esther of, Esther didn't have the privilege to say no. She had to come before the king. Vashti had that privilege.
Hmm.
And it cost her. It
Hmm.
cost her quite a bit. But that was something that I explore a little bit in the introductions to those chapters that definitely has stayed with me. There's more, but that's the one that kind of pops in my head always
Hmm.
as
Hmm.
when I'm tempted to maybe prejudge, especially another woman.
Hmm.
But it translates to men as well. It's like how do I really pause for a minute and say, what am I not seeing? What of their story do I not really know? And how could I approach different decisions that are made with curiosity and kindness instead of this like, well, I would do it this way kind of perspective.
Yeah, I think curiosity and kindness are the key words there, right?
Yeah,
Um, because that's how we give grace to other people.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I certainly need grace, so I need to practice giving grace to others. Yeah, yeah. So is there any kind of final word, like maybe what gives you hope now? Is there something that you'd like to share or you really want to reemphasize from our conversation today? Um, how do we flourish in tough times as leaders?
I guess some of the key words from our conversation, slowing down.
Yeah.
Are we, my spiritual director always starts our time together with, how's your soul? And that question just kind of takes my breath away always.
My husband asks me that.
Yeah. 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 And so really like, hey, how slow down. How is your soul? If your answer is I don't know, don't freak out. Just linger with the question longer
Mm,
and keep
mm,
coming back to it.
mhm.
If your answer is fine, that's not a feeling. I love that fine just means feelings in need of expression.
Oh, that's good.
So
I like that.
not doing that. So slowing, um, in the same way that I would say I hope we approach one another with curiosity and kindness. How do you approach yourself and with curiosity or the challenge to go, I'm curious why I'm feeling this, or I'm
Mhm,
curious where this thought may originate from,
mhm.
or what might be behind it. These are very chaplain-y questions. But I think that's what helps me and keeps me kind of going is to show that, slow down, get curious, get kind. Um, Yeah, and then maybe be around somebody who thinks different, votes different, prays different from you when it's safe to do that.
Mhm.
And rinse, repeat, slow with them, be curious with them, be kind. And
That's
I
great.
don't know, I think if collectively we can do that for one another and towards ourselves, we really can
Yeah,
have a more hope-filled life.
that's great. Thank you so much, Dori. This has been such a great conversation. How can people either find out more about you or reach out to you or contact you or just follow you? What would you recommend?
Sure. Well, a lot for my mental health. I'm not really on social media a whole lot these days, but I'm always happy to take an email. I'm assuming there may be some show notes, but D
Yeah.
Gorman, uh, D for Dory, D Gorman at YMCA. It's mid-10, but it's the abbreviation for middle, midtn.org. Happy to take emails that way. Our website, the YMCA midtn.org. If you really want to find us quickly, you would do /spirit-mind, and you can
Okay.
find us
Okay.
that way and learn a little bit more about what chaplaincy and what spiritual mental health can look like at a YMCA.
That's terrific. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful to meet
Absolutely.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. It's been great.
Thanks for joining me on Flourishing Leadership in Tough Times. If you found today's conversation meaningful, please like and share this episode and subscribe for more honest, inspiring stories to help you stay rooted with integrity, rise with courage, and lead with hopeful resilience. If you have thoughts or questions, or you're interested in finding out about coaching, spiritual direction, or retreat leadership, I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out through Substack or find my website at insideoutministries.info. I'm Deborah Owen, and I'll see you next time.